This is the Business Lens, where we go beyond the headlines and make sense of the numbers shaping your money, your business, and the Nigeria's economy. Now, let's start from the headlines. My name is Divine Alex, so you have to stay with me so that we could connect the headlines to your business and your money. Now, let's start with something that could literally change Africa's energy map. Imagine a gas pipeline running from Nigeria through 13 West African countries, right? That imagination, hold it there. Now, it is going to run all the way to Morocco. That's exactly what ECOWAS leaders have just backed. The project, they say, is worth a whopping $25 billion, and once completed, could move about 30 billion cubic meters of natural gas every single year. That's bigger, right? Now, bigger energy, bigger businesses, and hopefully bigger opportunities for the continent. Now, the real question is, can Africa finally turn all this gas into real wealth? Now, let's step away from that and head over to the next one, because while Africa is thinking big, Nigeria's own savings account is quietly getting bigger too. Now, if Nigeria had a piggy bank, it's looking quite healthy right now. The central bank says our foreign reserves have climbed to $51.89 billion. That's almost $52 billion. That's 45% higher than this time last year, and the strongest level we've seen in over a decade. Now, we've had economists that are smiling because it gives the country a stronger financial cushion. Nigerians, however, are asking one simple question: when does a stronger reserve become a stronger naira? That is a question on the minds of a lot of people. Now, talking about dollars, oil is still bringing in plenty of them. Here's another eye-catching number. Nigeria produced about 295 million barrels of crude oil and condensate between January and June this year. Now, let's put a price tag on that, and you're looking at roughly $28 billion. That's about 41.74 trillion naira in just 6 months. So yes, the oil is flowing. The bigger conversation is how much of that wealth is actually finding its way into the Nigerian economy. Now, let's step away from that and head over to the digital tax aspect. Now, while government is earning money, it is also changing the way businesses pay tax. So if you run a large business, here's a friendly reminder. July 31st, yes, this month, which means 11 days from today, is no longer just another date on the calendar. The Nigeria Revenue Service, NRS, says all large taxpayers must switch completely to its new electronic invoicing platform before the deadline. No more business as usual. Government says the goal is to make tax collections smarter, faster, and more transparent. Now, let's step away from that and head over to the next one. And speaking of government spending money, government says the reforms are beginning to pay off. Now, it's time for Nigerians to feel it. President Bola Ahmed Tinubu has unveiled about $3.05 billion in World Bank-supported programs targeted at healthcare, education, poverty reduction, and vulnerable households. This is one thing to say that, oh, the economy is improving, and there's another thing for families to actually feel that improvement. So if, they're deciding to do this particular one, okay, fingers crossed. Let's see how much of this effect gets down to the common Nigerian. Now, let's leave Asurok for the refinery. Yes, I know a lot of you are really interested around when we talk about oil, refinery, and all that. So if you thought that the Dangote refinery was slowing down, think again. Since operations began, its offshore terminal has already welcomed about 1,100 oil tankers. Today, an average of 75 tankers arrive every month, and that number is expected to keep growing. That's not just traffic, that's business on a very big scale. But we're going to see how much of this is going to actually find its way to assist the common Nigerians and the Nigeria's economy. Now, and while the refinery is moving oil, another sector is quietly moving trillions of naira, and retirement money is becoming serious business in Nigeria. Okay, let's paint a picture. Now, if I told you there's over 31 trillion naira sitting in one place in Nigeria, what would you suggest? I know the first thing that will come to your mind is definitely going to be oil money or maybe government revenue. Well, take a chill pill. It's actually your pension savings. Nigeria's pension assets have grown from 20.79 trillion naira to a record of 31.48 trillion naira in just 2 years, with over 938,000 new contributors joining the scheme. And here's where it gets really interesting. Pencom now says it wants to channel more of those trillions into Nigeria's capital market to help finance businesses and support economic growth. And I'm sure a lot of you are thinking that this is sounding really exciting, right? But here's the big question. This is a question that you need to pay attention to. How do you grow the economy with pension money without putting retirees' future at risk? That's a conversation we'll definitely be having today. But let's step away from that and step into some, good news that you would also really like. For people who have already retired, thousands of retired customs officers have something to smile about. Now, the Nigeria Customs Service has released 7.61 billion naira to pension fund administrators for the payment of retirement benefits to 4,237 retirees. After years of service, this is the kind of headline every worker hopes to see someday. And I'm sure a lot of you are already smiling, especially the retirees at the moment. Now, let's check what investors were up to before the closing bell. Well, investors pressed the take profit button after several strong sessions. Now, the Nigerian stock market took a small breather as about 32 billion naira left the market. The NGS All Share Index slipped just 0.9%, while market capitalization closed at 156.21 trillion naira. Now, we had analysts say nobody's panicking, with Treasury bills still offering attractive returns and interest rates sitting at 26.5%. Some investors are simply taking money off the table and parking it somewhere safer, at least for now. Now, this is what we have for you. Now, let's move from trillion naira pension funds to 41 trillion naira in oil, from Nigeria's growing dollar reserves to Africa's $25 billion gas dream. One question ties all the stories together. Are we finally building an economy that works for everyone, or are we simply getting better at announcing big numbers? Let's find out after the break. My name is Divine Alex. Please stay with us. Okay, you're welcome back. This is the Business Lens of Rapid Television Abuja. My name is Divine Alex. Now, for years, pensions in Nigeria were associated with long queues, delayed payments, and uncertainty about life after retirement. In fact, at some point, even me, myself, while growing up, it was looking like, just the old people's conversation. But today, the conversation is changing. Interestingly, Nigeria's pension industry has quietly become one of the biggest investors in the economy. In just 2 years, pension assets have grown by more than 10 trillion naira, climbing from 20.79 trillion naira to 31.48 trillion naira. Nearly 1 million Nigerians have joined the contributory pension scheme within the same period, while some retirees under the old NSITF scheme have seen their monthly pensions reviewed from 18,000 naira to 206,000 naira after more than 2 decades. Now, Pencom wants to take things a step further by increasing pension investment in the capital market. Supporters say this could provide businesses with long-term funding they need to grow, create more jobs and deepen Nigeria's financial markets. Others, however, are asking an important question. Should the savings people depend on after retirement be exposed to greater market risks? So this morning, we are asking, can pension money grow Nigeria's economy without putting retirees' future on the line? Now, to help us unpack it, I'm joined by a portfolio manager, Musa Sani. Good morning. Musa Sani, are you here? Can you hear me clearly?
Good morning, Divine. Yes, I can hear you.
Okay. I also have in studio economist Abiola Adekunle from Keto Markets. Good morning.
Good morning. It's good to be here.
Okay. Now, I know that you heard when I talked about the pension conversation, how pension is now having, a lot of assets, and also the fact that, we are not looking at taking this money to capital market. But let me start with Musa Sani. Now, Nigeria now has over 31.48 trillion naira in pension assets, like I quoted earlier. At what point does the pension industry stop being just a retirement scheme and become one of the country's most important economic institutions?
Oh, thank you very much for that question. If we are to do a quick recap on the growth of the pension asset, you would realize that at around 2007, the asset was far less than a trillion, around 850 something billion. But today we are talking of pension asset hitting over 31 trillion. This is really a milestone for the economy. This is really a milestone for the contributors. This demonstrates a strong and increasing confidence in the pension system, and as well as effectiveness of recent reforms we've seen in the industry. If you add 31.48 trillion, it provides a significant pool of long-term domestic capital for the economic development. Now, if you are talking of impact, pension funds really help in deepening the financial market. Today, we have the pension fund administrators as important institutional investors in the driving the Nigeria's capital market. From a scheme that commenced in 2004 and today, we are boasting of over a 31 trillion. So in terms of liquidity as well, you'll see that the funds support liquidity as well as stability in the market. Today, we are boosting of a strong domestic market where what we call hot money or foreign investment inflow does not significantly influence the direction of the market. You see foreign investors exiting the stock market, and the stock market is not really feeling the heat compared to when we do not have strong institutional investors taking part in the market. So most importantly, this asset belongs to contributors and retirees. So the growth must always be balanced in terms of the objective of securing their retirement benefit. It's not just a figure, right? It is representing a growing financial strength of Nigerian workers, and also a valuable source of long-term capital for the economy.
Okay, so how significant is this 31 trillion naira within Nigeria's financial system, and how does Nigeria compare with other economies?
So if you look at the GDP, the projection of our current GDP is in excess of 500 trillion. Okay. So, I mean, in terms of percentage, you would see that Nigeria's GDP, Nigeria's pension asset, it's sitting around 5.6% of its GDP, and it continues to grow. And this growth is underpinned by, like I said earlier, by the growth of the asset over time, plus the contribution that has been consistently increasing. Then again, you have the government now paying the backlog of accrued rights into the retirement savings account of contributors who have worked before the year 2004 and are still actively working. Then we used to have these contributors wait for so many years to access their benefits in the name of waiting for government to remit their accrued rights. Now we have the government in place that wants to clear, or that have cleared all accrued rights. Today in Nigeria, you can retire this month and then access your benefits immediately, irrespective of the sector you belong to. So we see the significance, we see the portion of the pension asset to our GDP sitting at around 5 to 6%, but it's something that has consistently increased over time. But when you look at when you look at this contribution and you compare it to other countries, you see that we are heavy on sovereign instruments. The portion of this asset being invested in FGN instrument is quite high, in excess of 50% is being invested currently in the sovereign instruments, namely FGN bonds, treasury
and the rest of them. Okay. We will be coming to that shortly, right? But let me get Economist Abiola's thoughts on this, because I also want to get your perspective, because him now is talking from the portfolio manager's aspect of it. Now we want you now as an economist, when you look at all these numbers and see what is happening here, what is the first thing that comes to your mind? It's really from where you're sitting.
Well, I don't want to speak as an economist. I want to speak as a private, worker. Okay. One of the major issues I've had with Nigerian pension scheme has not even been about the size of the pension, but for the fact that if at 35 or 40 years you lose your job, you cannot access more than 25% of your pension, irrespective. And then when you get to 50 years, you can now access another 25%. That is up to 50%. The remaining 50% will now be paid, periodically. My issue is this. If somebody is really down bad, it's a phrase, like you don't have a job, you're really suffering, but you have 20 million saved in pension, funds, but you cannot access it. So of what benefit? Is the size of the pension, the rate to the GDP, of what benefit is it to me as an ordinary person expecting to be able to access the money that I've contributed while working over decades of my, work experience. And now I really need these funds, but I'm being told to wait till I'm 50 years. And I'm telling you this not as not a third party, I'm telling you as somebody that have experienced it and also have friends that are going through the same thing. Now, leaving that aside, it's good that our pension the value of the pension funds have grown. But I also tell you that majority of the growth, one way or the other, came from government's payment of their own side. Because for some time, they've held back on their contributory side, but this administration now is clearing that, and that is one of the reasons why you see a rise. Another reason why you see a rise is because one way or the other, there is an expansion, accommodating more people into the pension scheme, especially the unofficial, or let me say the blue collar guys. So it's a good thing that our pension fund is going up. It's going into the stock capital market is a different conversation entirely. I have my own reservations about that. It. Yes. But at the end of the day, it's good news for now.
For now. Okay. Let me come back to Mr. Sani. I know you also heard his remark about the age thing. Now, I don't know if you want to comment on that before I shoot to the next question, because, so just go ahead.
Yeah. Okay. The economist sitting in your house is a good friend of mine, and let me say it clearly here that pension generally is it's a concept that is less discussed, even though it affects our life not in the immediate, but it's very important, and it's key that we are having this kind of conversation to clarify some issues, to educate ourselves on some matters. So if you look at any retirement savings account, it has two elements. Number one, it's your contribution, the employee contribution, which sits currently at minimum of 8%, and the employer portion of 10%. So we should be looking at it from that angle. So it is a mandatory form of saving. Today, if you take a sample of the 11 million contributors that have saved up to 31 trillion, you may not have 10% of that population having a disciplined saving like the retirement savings account. I don't want to ask you if you have more than what is on your retirement savings account, but that has really helped in ensuring you have a savings. Now, in terms of financial independence, the Pension Reform Act of 2004, has the objective of making provision that it will provide financial security for you upon retirement, right? Now, again, a recent reforms in the industry have given retirement savings account holders access to 25% of the RSA balance to acquire a mortgage facility, to serve as equity for mortgage facility. And I don't have the exact figure, but at the point that I was having a conversation with someone that have access to that data, told me that contributors have withdrawn through this medium more than 100 billion from their retirement savings account. And this figure is dated back to over 12 months. So you can imagine what would have been total withdrawal in that aspect for today.
Okay, and so like now, so now, because you already talked about the contributors aspect of it, because PENCOM says pension assets have grown by over 10.7 trillion naira in just 2 years, while almost 938,000 new contributors have joined the scheme. What is really driving this growth? Is it better investment returns, more contributors, stronger compliance? Or what exactly is the reason why we are even looking at this high number?
So it is likely a combination of different factors. Number one, I would say that there is an increase in confidence about the entire contributory pension scheme, right? And I'll also speak to the significant growth of the pension asset, which also is underpinned by high return on investment in pension asset. Today, I will tell you that there is a particular fund that has returned over 30% year to date.
Okay.
And that's quite a significant growth. And then another factor that may have contributed to this increase would be the growth in informal employment, as well as the increase in coverage of the CPS to the informal sector. So this particular growth in numbers suggests a greater acceptance of the CPS across the workforce. Now, you have faster processing of retirement benefits. Retirement benefits is processed, all things being equal, under 48 hours. Resolution of long pension liabilities, accrued rights have been settled even in arrears. You have increase in the pension payments. You have the likes of pension boost. You have other things that have increased confidence in contributors. The issue of pen care, the pension industry healthcare initiative, where the commission is already working on commencing provision of free healthcare services for about 30,000 retirees as a pilot study, and they intend to increase that. Then again, we see that there's a greater transparency in pension administration as of today.
Okay, so is this growth sustainable over the next decade? Because if we're looking at all of these things that is happening around the pension industry, is this growth sustainable? How sustainable is this growth over the next decade?
So I would say that it is sustainable, and what would drive sustainability in the growth is the regulatory standpoints. From the regulatory standpoint, we've seen reforms. I'm sure you've been following the news. You see that PFAs are now going through recapitalization, and they have a deadline of up to around mid next year. So PFAs will now have a stronger capital base. And again, when you talk of sustainability, the PFAs focus on capital preservation, risk adjustment, and then long-term sustainability of all these investments. So the funds are being diversified. Pension fund portfolios are being diversified. You have a portion being invested in government securities, corporate bond, money market instruments, equities, and now we are increasing exposure to alternatives. So this would surely drive sustainability of the scheme. And again, there's something that is really less talked about when it comes to issue of pension. We have the multi-fund structure in place. This is a structure that also drives sustainability. It ensures that investment risks align with contributors' risk profile. You cannot invest the contribution of somebody, an employee who is just 25 years, in the same investment or in the same pool of assets. You are investing the contribution of a contributor who is 50 or above. So younger contributors typically can tolerate more growth asset, while you have the older contributors being invested in a more conservative instrument, because they may not be after growth, but they may be looking at sustainability, safety, and then cash flow readiness.
Okay, so how should Nigerians say this? Should we be looking at this as evidence that the pension system is finally delivering, or are these exceptional cases rather than what we could just call the norm going forward?
Yeah, so I mean, it is not quite too exceptional. We can say that the performance of the stock market has been an exceptional one, but however, reforms in the pension sector, it's an ongoing. Last year, we had the Pension Revolution 2.0, which onboarded a lot of reforms in the industry. And thereafter, we've been seeing a lot of effort from the regulator and also the the fund managers, the pension fund administrators, trying to bring in more value addition into the scheme. So this is not just an exceptional case. We have a lot of factors that are strengthening the administration. We are seeing improvement in service delivery. We are seeing enhancement in transparency. We are experiencing expansion in coverage. We are also seeing the preservation of value of retirement benefits.
Okay, so how does this connect to inflation? Are many retirees still receiving pensions below today's cost of living?
Yeah, so thank you for bringing that up. You see, there are a lot of provisions to actually ensure that pension funds are invested across different assets. Not all assets return a return that is a risk-adjusted return. What I mean by risk-adjusted return is a return that will beat inflation, right? Mm-hmm. So you have to look at this. The risk management is the first rule of pension investment, right? So it has a focus on capital preservation, risk adjustment return, long-term sustainability. So the risk adjustment return is the return that factor in the inflation. Now, something is being put in place. There's what we call minimum pension guarantee, and part of the Pension Revolution 2.0 launched in September 2025 was that the minimum pension guarantee that has been in the Act but not being implemented would be implemented, and the Commission is really working hard on that to ensure the full commencement of minimum pension guarantee. And again, with increased exposure to the stock market, or rather the capital markets, the pension funds will now be chasing the private capital. Yes, when pension funds are chasing private capital, they are chasing a return.
Okay. Now let me come back to Economist Abiola, because like you said earlier, you're going to be playing the role of a common Nigerian, and then we hear a lot of these things.
Be the bad cop.
You understand that kind of a deal. Now, how do you think Nigerians should see this? And when we talk about this and relating it to inflation, what do you think that Nigerians should really be looking at?
Like you said, what everyone wants is a positive value to their investment. Meaning that if your investment or your pension funds, investment makes, or savings, makes 20% in a year, by the time we remove inflation, which is at 15.9%, there's still something there to show that your money is growing. So what a lot of people are looking at is the fact that whatever fund or whatever savings they have is steadily increasing over time. Now, my issue is this. At what point is the risk appetite of the pensioner or the person contributing accommodated? Because I don't think that pensioners have that access to be able to say, I have this level of risk appetite. Please invest me in this. I think that is just rationalized based on some factors that maybe the PFA or PENCOM actually decides, maybe like age, where you're working, when you retire, and all those things. But I, as a person, should be able to say, give me the highest risk. Give me the highest risk. I will be retiring in 30 years, but the highest risk at the end of the day is not still as risky as a whole lot of schemes out there. So an average person contributing wants something that you'll be able to retire on. My mother-in-law is being paid less than 40,000 naira per month as a pension, and she worked decades for the government, the federal government. So I'm sure that was part of whatever she contributed and everything, but can 40,000 take care of her? No. Her drugs alone are more than 50,000 naira in a month. So is it being realistic? No. The situation with her, for example, is not realistic. So what everybody is looking at is, after working for 30 years, my strength is not as it used to be. Will whatever I'm getting back be able to keep my lifestyle? Which is what I was talking about the minimum enforceable distance and all that.
Yes.
We need two things to work. One, the amounts should be substantial enough. Two, the level of growth over the years must be there in terms of profitability. So we should be having something that will be able to do 2x or 3x of the inflation rate. Anything less than that might not be the best after 30 or 40 years. Another thing I wanted to also add is, why can't we have some level of dynamism when it comes to our pension? Because if I buy a land 30 years ago I'm sure that the value of that land now, as far as it's not inside the bush or evil forest, I'm sure that the value of that land now would most likely beat almost any pension fund that has been in existence for that amount of years. So people should be able to have some level of, there should be dynamics in our pension. It should be much versatile now. It should not be too conventional, because the world has changed. The world is not changing. It has completely changed. There are so many investment vehicles now that are still safe, and people are making so much more. So we are not saying that the pension should compete with them, but at least they should do something that is meaningful compared to that.
Okay, so what you just said now is taking me to ask Mr. Sani the next question, which is on historical pension issues. Now, Mr. Sani, are you there? How much progress has really been made in clearing historical pension issues?
Okay, so let me quickly respond to my friend in the studio.
Okay.
Inflation itself, yes, I agree with you that it's a significant risk, and therefore we must see pension funds being invested in asset classes that generate return that would ensure and generate meaningful growth that would outgrow, or rather preserve, purchasing power over time, right? So, like I said initially, there is this knowledge gap, but I believe there has been increasing awareness when it comes to pension. Very few contributors are aware of the concern raised, right? The issue of aligning my own investments with my risk appetite or age profile, right? So let me quickly take you to what really exists and has really catered for, to a large extent, those areas we have highlighted. We have in place for a long time now what we call multi-fund structure. Initially, that concern is valid, but at the moment, regulation has made ample provision to really take care of that concern, right? And it is still evolving. Changes are coming in. Last year's Pension Revolution 2.0 added new asset classes to allowable investment instrument, and also increase exposure to those asset classes that he mentioned that can assure better return. So as it is now, we have about 7 different types of fund that align with age profile, investment objective of different categories of contributors. You have the likes of Fund 1, which is for contributors under the 49 years of age. And in that asset class, in that fund structure, up to 95% can be invested in variable income instruments, right? If you have a fund that expose your contribution, 95% of your contribution to variable income instrument, it ensures growth over time. Then it graduates further as the age increases, the variable income exposure increases. You have Fund 2 with about 75% maximum exposure to variable income instrument, and that is also for contributors. That's the default fund structure for contributors below 50 years. You also have Fund 3. This is strictly for contributors that are 50 years and are still working, so they are placed in Fund 3. In that particular fund, what you can do, how much you can expose the contribution to invariable income instrument is 20%. It graduates further to Fund 4. This fund belongs to retirees because they have retired, they don't want to take much risk. You can take up to 10% of their contribution. So it graduates further. Today, you have dollar-denominated fund for contributors who receive dollar or who are in the diaspora. So you have all these provisions. I believe awareness and then continued having of this kind of forum would increase awareness of all these provisions, and then people will begin to key in and take advantage of the existing regulation or provisions of the regulation.
Oh, okay. Now, PENCOM says it wants its pension to become more active in Nigeria's capital market. This is directly linked to the question we also asked earlier. Now, but contributors may ask, this is my retirement money, right? Not venture capital. How do you balance protecting contributors' savings while investing enough to grow the economy?
Okay, Thank you very much. Right. So in most of the institutional funds that we have, I would say that pension fund is one of the most heavily regulated fund in Nigeria that we have today. And that strict regulation have ensured safety of these funds over time. Now, in addition to the regulation, we have a lot of protections that the Act has provided. We have what we call the Pension Protection Fund. It is a fund set aside to take care of eventualities as things may unfold in the economy. But back to your question, yes, what does increasing investment in the capital market means? Over time, there has been investment in the capital market. The capital market has been the avenue through which this 31 trillion has been invested over time. Okay. However, now the regulator is saying that we want more, or we are increasing exposure in the capital market. If I take you to Section 85 of the Act, there's a particular, of the PRA, there's a particular restriction. PFAs cannot invest in assets of their custodian or the subsidiary of their custodian. However, recently, the regulator came out to give forbearance for these PFAs to be able to invest, but however, under a cap and strict regulation. So investments have been in the capital market, be it listed equities, corporate bonds, infrastructure funds, real estate investment trusts, private capital, and other approved investment vehicles. Now, the objective is to provide long-term returns and reduce excessive concentration in government securities. Today, countries like Canada, America, South Africa have over 50% of their pension assets invested in private instruments. But in Nigeria, the reverse is the case. We have over 50% of our pension fund invested in the sovereign instrument. Now, historically, we've been seeing equities and corporate investments providing better long-term growth than fixed income investment alone. If you table all asset classes today, equities has the highest performance so far. It has the best return. Now, contributors, what would they benefit from this increased exposure to capital market or increased exposure to the private market? Okay. Now, you begin to see higher retirement balances. I said earlier that if you check, there is a particular fund that has returned over 30% year to date. And this is all function of exposing the asset to those asset classes that provide better return. Now, again, this exposure will mean better inflation protection.
Sani, are you there? Can you hear me? Okay, while you were speaking, I was waiting to ask you what about the risk aspect of it, right? Because I needed to hear you explain the level of risk that should be accepted in this. But while we're waiting for him to get back, I think something is wrong with his network since he's, joining us via a call. Let me come back to you, Economist Abiola. Now, should pension, funds invest more in the capital market or fund infrastructure, or can it be both? Especially with all the details that he has been,
Yeah, dishing out.
Yes.
Well, Mr. Sani has said a whole lot, and it makes a lot of sense, its analysis, that some part of this 31 trillion was actually gotten from the capital market. So why not expose it more? Now, if you understand how money market works, you understand what they call volatility and range.
Okay.
What does that mean? Now, if you look at a commodity or an asset class like gold, and you look at the range and volatility over the past 1 year, you see that it's very high. What it means is that at some point in the past 1 year, gold was at, let's say, 60% of its value currently, and at some point it was at 100%, meaning that it was moving wildly between a very large percentage of its value. Now, when you go back to the money market, the capital market, one of the things you also notice that there are some asset classes there that have a large or a wide range, meaning that they are actually volatile, and there are some that have a lower range, which means that they are not as volatile as the other one. So what the pension funds usually look at are funds that are not too volatile, so that even though they are going to swing, they will not swing so widely. We are talking about a situation where a fund or an asset class historically has not moved, let's say, in a year beyond, let's say, 15% of its value. So you're looking at investing in such, because even though past performance is not a guarantee of future performance, but you understand that there's always a part of history that predicts the future.
What about risks?
That's the risk I'm talking about. The risk is that they are not that volatile. They don't move around too much. If you see an asset class in the capital market that today, for example, is 500 naira, then 3 months down the line is 300 naira. That is a heavily volatile, asset class. So the pension fund definitely will not go for such. They will go for things that are manageable. And like you said, there's also the pension fund protection board that still serves as an extra safety net in case things don't go the way it's meant to go. So at the end of the day, the capital market is not a bad place for much more exposure for the pension funds. But for there to be a mix, I would prefer that. That is, we are looking at infrastructures and we're also looking at the capital market.
Okay, thank you so much for that. Thank you so much to you, Mr. Biola, for that. And thank you to you, Sani, for giving us a lot of breakdowns. But before we go, it's time for our business word of the day. Today's word is FAAC. FAAC. I know that a lot of times you've seen it. So now, if you probably heard the news say FAAC shared 2.55 trillion naira, but what exactly is FAAC? FAAC simply stands for Federation Accounts Allocation Committee. Think of it as the monthly meeting where money collected by the federal government from oil sales taxes, custom duties, VAT, that's the VAT, and other revenues is shared among the federal government, the 36 states, and the 774 local governments. So whenever you hear that FAAC has shared money, it means governments across Nigeria have received funds to help pay salaries, build roads, provide healthcare, education, and other public services. But that's all we have for you today on Business Lens. See you next time for another interesting episode. My name is Divine Alex, and this has been your Business Lens on Rapid Television Abuja. Bye for now.